In 1931, Imperial Japan seized Manchuria, China's industrial backdoor, and then tightened its grip by installing the last Chinese emperor, Pu Yi, as a figurehead ruler of a new puppet state they called Manchukuo. It wasn't just a land grab, it was a forward base, rich in coal, wide open for settlement, and perfectly placed for the next push. That push came in 1937, when Japan launched an undeclared war against China with a clear aim. Take the eastern and southern regions where the major cities and most of the industry actually were. The fighting moved fast. Japanese forces, better trained and more aggressive, ripped through large swaths of territory. China's nationalist government under Chiang Kai-shek, based at Nanjing, found itself outmatched and on the back foot, and the violence would soon be marked by atrocities, most notoriously at Nanjing in December 1937. Chiang's armies did not simply collapse, but they were forced into a long, punishing retreat westward, trading land for time, until a new headquarters and wartime capital took shape in Chongqing, then often rendered Chungking. On paper, China had numbers. In reality, corruption, weak administration, uneven leadership, and chronic shortages meant many units were poorly equipped and badly coordinated. Even in the air, the story was the same. A force that looked substantial on paper, but was outclassed by newer Japanese aircraft when it mattered most. Over the battlefield, over the cities, and over a nation that was running out of room to fall back. At first, the help Chiang wanted simply didn't arrive in a form that could change the air war. A small squadron of volunteer pilots, British, American, and Dutch, showed up while none of their countries was officially at war with Japan. They flew hard, but they were too few, and their aircraft were wiped out by 1938. The effort made headlines, not impact. The first truly significant outside assistance came from an unexpected direction: the Soviet Union. In 1937, Moscow and China signed a non-aggression pact, both recognizing Japan as a threat. Soon after, the Soviets sent 2 bomber squadrons and 4 fighter squadrons to aid nationalist China, and they didn't come piecemeal. This was a self-contained force, bringing its own ground crews and supplies, and it helped what remained of the Chinese Air Force regroup around Kunming. The Soviets also provided roughly 400 aircraft and helped establish flying schools. But even that welcome lifeline had a hard ceiling. Japan's bombers ranged deep, so deep they could strike the capital at Chongqing in October 1940, and the Soviet contribution, however valuable, was still too small to build the kind of full, layered fighter defense China desperately needed. China's next move was not a dramatic battlefield gamble. It was paperwork, negotiation, and a race against the calendar. In Washington, Major General Mao Pao-tsao, the Chinese Air Force's operations director, arrived with an ambitious shopping list: 650 modern aircraft that could rebuild a shattered air arm. But the world Mao walked into was one where Britain's needs came first, and production lines were already spoken for. After the bargaining, the reality was stark. Instead of 650 planes, China could secure only 100 Curtiss P-40 fighters, pulled from a cancelled British order. Even that small number mattered, because it created a new question. Who would fly them? Enter Claire Chennault. He would handle the recruiting, finding American pilots willing to sign on for a fight that the United States, officially, was not in. China would provide the aircraft, the ground crews, and the supplies. On the surface, it sounded straightforward. Under the hood, it was anything but. In 1940, America was still bound by the Neutrality Acts. Washington could not be seen openly backing China against Japan. So the entire effort had to be private, unofficial, carefully engineered to look like business, not war. That's where the behind-the-scenes miracle really happened. 2 corporations were created to sidestep the legal tripwires. The Central Aircraft Manufacturing Company, CAMCO, which would employ the pilots on contract, with Chennault as supervisor, and the China Defense Supplies Corporation, based in Washington, D.C., to handle the broader support structure. The flying unit itself took a simple, blunt name: the American Volunteer Group, the AVG. By June 1941, the receipts were there in black and white. About 100 pilots and 150 mechanics. A private air force built on contracts and deniability, preparing to fight a very public war. To understand why the AVG mattered, you have to follow the supplies, not the headlines. China's lifeline ran through Burma. Allied aid didn't arrive neatly at the Chinese front. It came ashore at the Burmese port of Rangoon, was stacked, sorted, and shoved inland, and then climbed the long, punishing haul of the Burma Road until it finally reached Kunming in Yunnan province. From there, it fed Chiang Kai-shek's armies with the one thing they could never manufacture fast enough: time, fuel, parts, ammunition, everything that kept a desperate war going. Cut that road, and China didn't just lose trucks and crates, it lost oxygen. Japan understood that too. By late 1941, the pressure was building toward a simple objective: sever the artery. And that made the AVG's first assignment brutally clear. They weren't being asked to show the flag or fly symbolic patrols. They were being placed like padlocks at both ends of the chain. Chennault's American Volunteer Group deployed to defend the Burma Road's endpoints. One squadron based at Rangoon to protect the port where the supplies entered, and 2 squadrons positioned at Kunming to guard the road's far end inside China. It was a neat plan on a map, but a hard promise in the air. Cover 2 vital targets, hundreds of miles apart, against an enemy that could choose when and where to strike. And once the first Japanese bombers came over the horizon, that promise would be tested immediately. Before the AVG ever became a legend in combat reports, it became a legend in paint. Those jagged teeth on the noses of the P-40s are often remembered as a tiger's mouth. Fitting, dramatic, easy to repeat. But the truth is more interesting. It wasn't a tiger at all. It was a shark. An AVG pilot had seen a photograph of a Royal Air Force P-40 from number 112 Squadron, operating in North Africa with a snarling mouth painted on the cowl. The British design itself wasn't original either. It had been copied from the nose art on a German Messerschmitt Bf-110 heavy fighter of ZG-76 that had operated over Crete. In other words, the famous Flying Tiger's grin was a hand-me-down, passed from Germany to Britain, then carried halfway around the world and reborn on American fighters over Burma and China. The name Flying Tigers came from the AVG's support organization in Washington, D.C., the China Defense Supplies setup that helped keep the whole private Air Force arrangement standing. And alongside the teeth was another symbol, quieter but more urgent: the blood chit. Sewn to the back of an AVG pilot's jacket, it carried the Chinese flag and a message in Chinese characters asking soldiers and civilians to rescue and protect the foreign flyer if he was shot down. It was part badge, part plea, because in this war, survival could depend on the next village you landed near. The AVG's story stops being theory on December 20th, 1941, less than 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor, when America was finally, officially, at war. Up to that point, the Flying Tigers had been a private force built on contracts and careful deniability. Now they were staring straight at Japanese formations in the sky, and there was nothing unofficial about tracer fire. Throughout December, AVG squadrons flew interception missions against Japanese bomber streams that came in with fighter escorts. Over Rangoon, they weren't alone. Royal Air Force Brewster Buffaloes from No. 67 Squadron were in the mix, and together they went after raids that were meant to smash the port and choke the Burma Road at its source. Then came Christmas Day. On December 25, 1941, a heavy strike surged toward Rangoon. 63 Japanese bombers escorted by 25 fighters. The defense that rose to meet them was smaller, leaner, and flying on nerve as much as gasoline. 14 P-40s from the Flying Tigers and 15 RAF Buffaloes. But in the fight that followed, the raid didn't get a free run. According to the account, 35 Japanese aircraft were shot down. And after Christmas, the war didn't pause. It tightened. In January 1942, Japan drove its ground offensive into Burma, and the AVG was ground down by attrition. Constant sorties, constant pressure, no easy resets. Even so, the pilots kept scoring. 73 victories by January 24th. But victories didn't stop the map from changing. Rangoon fell to the Japanese, and the Flying Tigers were forced to pull back north, still guarding the lifeline, but now doing it from farther away, with fewer aircraft and with the sense that the fight was turning into a long, punishing grind. By early 1942, the numbers stopped being statistics and started feeling like a countdown. After Rangoon fell and the front rolled north, the Allies were trying to hold an entire air war together with scraps. Just 38 aircraft in the region, including only 8 Flying Tigers P-40s, facing a Japanese strength of 271 aircraft. That kind of imbalance doesn't just shape tactics, it shapes sleep, appetite, and the way a pilot looks at the weather outside his tent. The pressure kept tightening. On March 23, 1942, with only 4 P-40s left, the AVG finally abandoned Burma and pulled back to Loiwing, just inside China. Fresh P-40s trickled in, and by April 8th, the group was back up to 12 aircraft. On paper, it looked like recovery. In the cockpit, it didn't feel like it. This is where the rhythm of the story changes, because the enemy wasn't only Japanese fighters anymore. It was deprivation, rough living conditions, bad weather, and missions so dangerous they wore men down faster than enemy bullets. Morale, as the account puts it, hit rock bottom. The strain spilled over in mid-April. 24 pilots resigned in what amounted to an open revolt. Chennault moved fast, warning of desertion charges and talking men back from the edge. Most withdrew their resignations. Only 4 held out and left. But even with the signatures erased, the message remained. The damage was done, and the Flying Tigers were now fighting 2 battles at once, one in the air and one inside their own ranks. Once the United States was openly at war with Japan, the Flying Tigers' original reason for existing, plausible deniability, began to disappear. A private, contract-built air force made sense when America had to look the other way. It made far less sense when American uniforms were already on the battlefield. So in July 1942, what remained of the American volunteer group was absorbed into the China-American Task Force, with Chennault in command. Even then, only a handful of AVG pilots chose to stay on under the new arrangement. The name that had carried so much myth was fading, but the mission was not. In 1943, the organization was absorbed again, this time into the US 14th Air Force, becoming, as the account frames it, China's main shield in the air. And when you strip away the teeth, the patches, and the headlines, the ledger still lands with weight. 296 Japanese aircraft destroyed, for the loss of 14 AVG pilots.